Hey guys, Stealth here. With the new DLC for Wargame Red Dragon, that's DLC number 2, which added 12 new units and the North Korean or the Second Korean War campaign, there were also quite a number of changes to units. So let's have a look at what units were changed and what other things have happened in the patch notes. Now, first of all, a general change which I cannot really show in the armory. More units were available to motorized, mechanized and armored decks to make them more interesting to use. This is good news because armored, mechanized and motorized decks were specialized, of course, which does give advantages in the sense of more units or less units with more experience, but it also limited you severely in some decks, which made it impossible to use them. So I cannot really particularly show you any of these changes, but it does sound like a very good thing, because it makes them more diverse, it makes them more rounded and more suitable. Now they also changed something on the map Floods. One side used to have its units starting in reverse, and they changed that. Tank aiming time versus infantry has been increased from 1 second to 1.4 seconds. And this happens in the forests, or at least this is advantageous for forests, because infantry can get the first shot in forests. They can aim their light anti-tank weapons faster than the tanks can aim their main gun, which makes sure that tanks can no longer just simply steamroll through forests and kill anything in their way. The infantry now stand a much better chance. Now, let's have a look at the actual unit changes. We have the CMD Chieftain. That's this tank. It has its speed increased to 45. Still not a very good speed for a tank off-road, but you probably not use these things too much anyway. So I don't think this is going to affect the gameplay too much. Now, the Spetsnaz have gotten a different weapon, and that's the Spetsnaz VMF. They used to use the Dragunov SVD sniper, this one. They now have a different one. They have the Vintorez. And let's compare these two. I don't see any change. It's just a different weapon. The only thing I notice here is 7.62mm rounds versus 90mm rounds. I suspect by looking at the gun that these things are silenced, which makes them a lot more sneaky and it adds to the exceptional stealth of the already very stealthy Spetsnaz VMF Scout. This way you can silently pick off units, pick off command infantry if it's in the forests. So these should be even deadlier against infantry, but otherwise they still have the sniper and they still have the same specs. They also had their service date changed from 1975 to 1987. Well, big deal. I don't really care what year they're used in. That's because I don't really use the category B, C or D decks. I only use the category A decks where I have availability of everything. So this doesn't really affect me, but if it does affect you, then keep it in mind. You cannot use these things with decks where you're using them before 1987. So in a 1985 deck you're not going to be using these units anymore. So if this affects you, make sure you take another look at your recon category and adjust. Now we also have some other changes. And this concerns the Haebyungs. These are South Korean shock troopers. They had their availability increased from 1 to 2, so this should make them a little bit more available on the battlefield. Now it says that it concerns the Haebyungs 90s. These are very, very good infantry, very good assault rifle, but especially this Panzerfaust 3, or at least PZF 3, so I'm supposing it's still the same German term. These are very, very good anti-tank weapons. 22 AP power, 70% accuracy, and they carry 12. And now you can have 2 of these cards in your deck. The Chinese Lu Zandui. That's these units. These are the standard shock troopers for the Chinese. The rocket launcher rate of fire increased to 20 rounds per minute. And this is not about the standard Zanduis, but these guys. So these can fire all of their rockets in a very high speed. And they're pretty decent anti-tank weapons. 525, which is somewhat on the low side. 875 is better. 60% accuracy, 21% AP power, 12 rockets. So keep in mind that these things will fire a lot faster now, twice as fast. Next, in the vehicle section of tanks, we have the Leopard 1s. Now all of these Leopard 1s have seemed to have been buffed. They have increased a rate of fire from 8 to 10. So keep in mind, if you're facing a Leopard, it's going to kill you even faster than it normally would. Rate of fire went up by 2 rounds per minute. The Scorpion Light Tank for Blue 4, which seems to be the general one. Scorpion Light Tank. These things have been made a bit cheaper. This is the Scorpion Recon, so don't mistake them with those. These Scorpion Light Tanks, the standard ones, they were 25 points, they're now 20 points. The French AMX 30 3240 series have increased rate of fire from 8 to 9. Now that's these tanks, the AMX 30s. And it goes for AMX 30, 32 and 40. So all of these vehicles, these, the 30s, the 32s and the 40s have all gotten a small increase in rate of fire. The AMX 40 also had its gun buffed. The AP power from these guns is now 19, so you can even more use these things as tank killers in your decks. Next up, the American M60 line has gotten an increase in rate of fire. Again, a lot of buffs to tanks. They have increased their rate of fire from 8 rounds to 10 rounds per minute. So these things have gotten a bit more deadly. The M60A1 USMC, let's see, that's the Marine version, USMC, had its price increased from 30 to 35. I don't know if that's good or bad. I rarely use these things, to be honest. So let me know in the comments what you think of this price change. Are they worth it? Are they not worth it? Maybe the increased rate of fire from 8 to 10 does make them worth it. Anyway, let me know in the comments. The M60A2E2 Starship, that's this one. Price reduced from 45 to 40, which makes them even more valuable in your decks. They already come with a very good main gun, which can be used against infantry and tanks. Although they're not very good against tanks with an AP power of 11. They have a decent autocannon on them and a Schiller-Lack missile, 30% accuracy, that they're really going to hit only about 2 of these. So keep that in mind, they're not that good. American Starship and Sheridan rate of fire increased from 7 to 8 rounds per minute. And that's the standard Starships, it would seem. Let's see. This is the Starship, although I don't see a rate of fire. Yeah, okay, the rate of fire is 8 rounds a minute. M1 Abrams. These bad boys have been made cheaper. They were 70 points, now they're only 65. I think that makes them very plausible for a deck. They have good frontal armor, they have good AP power, and let's compare these to a T-72 of similar stature. Say T-72, something around 65, 70 points. Let's say the 70 point Jaguar. 14 versus 15 AP power or AP value. Their guns are a bit less in the AP power department than these, but they're a lot more accurate, both on the move and standing still. They have a bit more weaponry. Don't expect these to take on tanks, at least not from the front, not the heaviest tanks, but other tanks they should be fine against. They have, however, gotten a nerf. They have been nerfed in their rate of fire. This used to be 10 and it is now 9. So keep in mind that these things fire a little more slowly. You might want to bring some additional supporting vehicles to cover that up. Another American tank that has been changed is the M8 AGS. Accuracy increased from 45% to 65%, and Stabilizer increased from 40 to 60. These things were already very nice to have in your deck, especially in an American armored deck. They're decent. Oh, sorry, you cannot use them in an armored deck. Must have been mistaken with the airborne. They have a very, very good accuracy now, both on the move and standing still. They have a small size, so it's difficult for tanks, or at least more difficult for tanks to hit them. So keep these bad boys in your deck. Good rate of fire, good accuracy now. So these things will help your airborne or motorized assaults. Next, the FV101 Scorpion. This price has been reduced from 30 to 25. Medium stealth, good optics, small size. I'd say this is a decent unit for 25 points. For 30, I might still use them because the British or the Commonwealth don't really have that much availability of scout units anyway. Then the Chieftain Mark II can now fire on the move with an accuracy of 52%. Sorry, not 52, with an accuracy of 40%. Again, not great, but they hang on. I'm talking about this is the Chieftain Mark 11, the Chieftain Mark II, this one. This used to have a stat tag, I suppose. It doesn't used to have a stabilizer. So now you can use these things on the move, but they're still not spectacular at doing it. I suggest keeping these things still and use their 40% accuracy. The British Chieftain series rate of fire has been increased from 6 to 7 rounds a minute, so that does help. And combine that with a stabilizer, this should be making this thing a decent unit, although I don't like their autonomy and I don't like their speed, so I myself won't be using them. But let me know in the comments what you think about this unit. Would you use it for 40 points, or do you think it's better to take one of the other chieftains? Next, the South Korean K1 tank. This has a rate of fire decrease. It used to fire 10 rounds a minute, now it only fires 9. Well, I think this is more than fair because these things are already such great tanks that they can miss 1 round a minute of fire. They have 17 frontal armor, a really high accuracy and stabilizer, decent AP values. So I don't really mind them being nerfed just a little bit. Next, the Japanese Nana Yonshiki A. Nana Yonshiki. Oh, where are these? The Nana Yonshiki A's. These tanks have been price increased. They were 30 points, they're now 35. This makes the difference between the A and the C even less. And in this case I would always go for the C. Let's compare these, A and C. Same gun, both heat rounds, both 32, same range, same accuracy. The only difference is AP power. For 5 points I'll take 3 points of AP power extra. Oh, sorry, it's not exactly the same gun. This one fires heat and this one fires kinetic. So I don't really see why they made this difference so small now. With a little bit bigger gap you'd have more diversity and have bigger or more reason to go for the Nana Yonshiki A. But let me know what you think in the comments about this change. Finally, for blue, for the STRV 103Cs, those are the Swedish tanks. Sorry, Sweden. STRV 103Cs, I think. Price reduced from 85 to 80. These are even cheaper, and they are really effective tanks. 13 frontal armor, 55 accuracy, 15 AP power, which is more than decent, and I especially like the price decrease in this. Next, we're going to Red 4. These have some changes to their tanks. The T-72S has been changed. Now, I think this goes for all of the T-72Ss. Let's see what they changed. Availability reduced from 6 to 4. Apparently they were performing too well and you had too many of them on the battlefield, so now they took out a couple of availability. They also increased the price of the standard T-72. Let's see. these were 40 and they're now 45. Still, T-72s are very good tanks for 45 points, so I think this is valid. The T-55 Dyna. This unit has been changed. Its autonomy has been increased to 700 kilometers, which makes them travel all the way across the map and back, basically. And this way it matches other T-55s. So they've done nothing to the other stats except the autonomy. North Korean Chonma-Hos have been changed. These Chonma-Hos have been changed from 25 to 30. A little bit more expensive. Still don't see why you'd use them in the deck compared to the Chonma-Ho 2, which are more effective, better range, better armor, so I'd take these anyway. Type 59s, price increased from 35 to 40. So these tanks, the Type 59-1, these have been price increased. They're now 40 points. ZTS 63s have been changed. And in particular these units. They have been reduced in price from 45 to 40. They were already very good units with their Bastion anti-tank weapon and their standard main gun. And for 40 points I'll definitely use these in my Chinese decks. Next, the T-72A. Price has been decreased from 60 to 55. Now combine that with the increase of the T-72 price from 40 to 45, and I don't see why you'd pick a T-72 over a T-72A. If you compare these units, they're not that different. The only difference is a bit more armor for the T-72A, a better gun with more range, more AP power, more rate of fire, better optics, same autonomy, same off-road speed. So I would pick these units anytime over the standard T-72. Next up, the T-62 MV-1 has been changed. Price reduced from 70 to 65. Now I've never used T-62s in my deck. I usually stick to T-72s, so let me know what you think about this change in the comments. Is it worth the price decrease? Should have had its price kept that way? Looking forward to hearing from you because I really don't know about this unit. The T-80Bs have had their price decreased from 85 to 80. Let's see. This is weird. I think that this hasn't been changed yet because the T-80s are still 80. So it was in the patch notes, but it wasn't changed. And the T-80BVs have had their price increased from 115 to 120. Now these were already very good units, and I don't mind paying 5 points extra for these. Next up, the support category. The Chieftain Marksmans. Enable blue for again. Chieftain Marksmans. These have had a speed increase. They're now going 45 off-road to match their normal tank counterparts, because it's basically an anti-air gun on the Chieftain chassis, so it should have the same speed. They changed the Ondava. Its aim time has been reduced from 30 seconds to 10 seconds. Now combine that with their already very good dispersion and you basically have a Czech version of the French Caesar. And this makes them very, very valuable as artillery units in your deck. So if you have availability, change these and get the Ondavas. They have been nerfed in another respect though. Availability has been reduced from 3 to 2, which means that you can only bring 2 of these, but if I compare this to the Caesar, I really don't see myself using 3 Caesars, let alone 3 Ondavas. So I think this is perfectly okay. We also have a change in the Chinese mortar carriers. The YW304s and the 384 ones 384 1s 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 Now these shouldn't be on the front lines anyway, but this way they're going to be a little easier to target. So make sure you keep them well away from your front lines. Next, the Norwegian XA-180. These units have had their fuel capacity increased from 80 to 145 and had their autonomy doubled. So you can now use these things to cross the map and go back. And they've also gotten an increase in off-road speed. Here's a better view. These things can now go 100 kph where they used to go 70. M163s have been nerfed a bit. The American CS version. These take 0.4 seconds longer to aim, which means that they have gotten the same nerf as the tanks. So if you send these into a forest to deal with infantry, they might be taken out before they wipe out the infantry. As a counter to this, I'd suggest sending in 2 of these. Just combine them, they're on 20 points each, so why not? Norwegian M113 availability increased to not restrict LHV availability. So what they're basically saying is that they have given you more of these units, of these NM113s, so that you can call out more LHVs. Now I think that's already quite generous, because these are rifle teams, these are militia rifle teams, so reservists really, and you already only use these in case of emergency, or at least I do. And now you're getting even more of them. So let me know what you think in the comments. The F4 510 Warrior 90. These have been changed. They had their frontal armor increased from 4, or sorry, all of their armor actually. The frontal armor used to be 4, side armor used to be 4, aft armor used to be 2 and is still 2, and top armor has now been increased to 2. So these things are now much more viable and they can take a lot more fire from the front. Still, don't expose them to heavy tanks because they'll still roll over. And as a bonus shot, here is the new FV10 or 510 Warrior Emerald Lance. I do cover this unit more in depth in my other video. They've changed some other things. The Ural ZU-23-2. These units cannot fire on the move, unlike the Polish version. So the Soviet Urals cannot fire on the move, the Polish version can. These have apparently gotten the stationary tag now. And lost their stabilizer apparently. BTR 80s. Price reduced from 20 to 15. So these transports are a little cheaper, and I really like the heavy machine gun on these things because they have 1 AP power and a higher rate of fire, and now you can bring them in for even cheaper. Looks like a good change to me. Finally, in the vehicles category, the Afgansky has been changed. Loadout reduced from 4,000 rounds to 2,000 rounds, and aim time increased from 1 to 1.4. So this reflects the American 163 CS change, which also had their aim time increased from 1 to 1.4. But basically the same advice applies. Send 2 of these into forest if you want to clear a forest of infantry using these things. And keep in mind that they had 4,000 rounds. They have a rate of fire of 1700. So if you keep these on full auto, they're going to be empty in 1 minute. These things will be supply hogs. So you can use them. They are cheap, but they will eat supplies. Next, in the helicopters. The helicopters had a weird bug where they were flying upside down. And this apparently happened when they passed a mountain edge at full speed, but they cannot do this anymore. I'm not sure if this will actually change the behavior of the planes or of the helicopters. Helicopter reactivity when shooting their ATGMs increased. I'm not sure what they mean by this. The reactivity might mean that the helicopters will shake more violently after firing one of their ATGMs, or it might mean that they're going to be faster to stop, so you can fire the ATGM earlier. I'm not too sure which ones it is. Helicopters now are also able to fire on the move and have a wire firing arc. They can even shoot if the target is not perfectly in front of them. Now this is nice, especially for the heavier assault choppers, let's say the Apache. Normally you should have been, say, somewhere in this arc. This arc has now been increased. I'm not sure how far, maybe even up to 180 degrees, but this means that these choppers can now fire at more targets. They don't have to face them head on. And finally the Mi-24s, S24s. Sorry, Mi-24 S24s. I believe those were introduced in the latest patch. Where are they? Mi-24. This is weird. Mi-24 S24 doesn't yield any results. I don't have any filters on, so I'm not sure where this helicopter is really. Anyway, its price has been increased from 60 to 65. Now, they're a bit more expensive now, but I think that Heinz were always very, very good helicopters anyway, so a little price increase might not be the bad thing. Next, in the air category, meaning planes, the Nighthawk has gotten a buff. This thing was already destructive, 20 HE power. It can now carry 2 bombs. I still think that it will take, or it will drop both bombs on the same target. If not, it might be able to drop a bomb and then fly back and drop another bomb. I hope it drops 2 bombs at the same time, because if it drops 2 bombs separately, that makes them more vulnerable. They have to stay in the area of operations longer, making them more vulnerable to anti-air. So make sure you, or let's see what happens when you use these. And finally, the North Korean Su-25 has been changed. This one. Its loadout's been changed from 8 FAB 500s, where it used to have bombs, to 4 KH-23 anti-tank weapons. And the price has been reduced from 140 to 110. That's quite a significant buff. Such a price nerf, or buff, depending on how you want to see it. At least they're they're lots cheaper this time. And they seem to have taken on less of a bombing role and more of a anti-tank role. They're tank snipers now. Still, tank snipers with 10% ECM, some armor and low speeds, meh. I'd rather deliver my ATGMs in a faster platform. Although of course you can use this autocannon, and this makes them somewhat of a competitor to the A10. Although the A10 is even slower at 500. So that's the entire change of units, that's the entire change log. Let me know what you think in the comments of these changes. Do you like them? Do you think some units should have been changed? Should some units have been adjusted upwards or downwards? Are any of your favorite units affected? Let me know in the comments. Also, I have another video about the new units which were introduced this patch. I'm going to link to that video right here. And let me know what you think of that video. There are some new units and some of them are very, very good. Wondering what you think, so leave me a comment in that video as well. Thanks for watching and see you online playing Red Dragon.